Hey there, it is day 29 of the 1, 2, 3 Draw 30-day challenge. And today we're going to do a pretzel. So here you can see what it would look like if you added a little color pencil to it. So you can do that on your own. I did it all with one single brown color pencil, and I used a white color pencil to smear it out. So if you have those supplies, you should further your image with some color. So let's get started now with today's assignment. We're going to begin with a teardrop shape facing down. So this is going to be the opening of one side of your pretzel. So right here you can decide on what type of pretzel you want it to be, whether you want it to have a thick or a thin ribbon of a pretzel. So maybe it's a soft pretzel, maybe it's a crispy hard pretzel. And I'm going to decide right now how thick by making a second teardrop shape around the outside edge. So I'm really doing a lot of sketching, which is going to be just fine because I'm going to do so much shadowing with my pencil. All right, so it's straight up and down. And I'm going to make a second one that's identical to this. It doesn't have to be really perfect, though, because it's a baked object and it could be imperfect, right? And I'm going to make this teardrop shape look just like that one, but it's going to touch the larger one. So there are two teardrops right next to each other. And then I'm going to double up this one, and I'm going to just kind of make them look like they overlap. So you can see now the pretzel shape that is forming. Teardrop. So it's double teardrop intersecting one another. Now we're going to bring this one around, and it almost forms like a little heart shape. You see that? And we can pretend that this line kind of came around there like that. And these parts are like the ends of the pretzel. So we're going to overlap these lines and maybe give it a slightly round edge. You can erase this piece. And same thing over here. See, I'm going to make this look a little bit more natural by putting a curve there. And then I'll erase this line as well. Now, I'm going to erase all of these lines in the middle because I need to make this look like a pretzel twist. So if a pretzel twists, one part goes around and comes back around again. So this part we're going to make go in front of this one and will bulge out just a tiny bit there. And this one we're going to make kind of come straight across and meet up with that. So see how it makes one full loop there? And now I can erase some of that out so I can keep focused on the design. And this is going to be one bar. And it's going to come out and bulge a little bit there and then come around to there. And there we go. So next part we're going to do is give it some detail. So we need to give it salt. And if you draw too much salt, it kind of makes it difficult to color around it. So I'm going to be drawing not too much salt and some nice little pieces that are square. Salt is really crystallized shape, so they can be really kind of perfect little squares. And like I said, don't draw too many of them. You will be sorry. Besides that, too much salt is not good for you. All right, so try to make them randomly placed. And sometimes when I get a nice soft pretzel, I do knock some of that salt off anyway, so it's not too much. All right, and it's time to start shadowing and coloring. So we'll pretend that the light is coming from one different area, so this area here, and we'll give that left side of the pretzel in every area there some darkness. Okay, so you see my outline of my shadow, but we need to make it more defined. So this line has to be nice and sharp so that it doesn't look like the edge of the pretzel got messed up. And I'm going to color as gently as I can, but get it as dark as I can without pressing hard. Then I can take my finger or my blender, whatever you have, and blend that out so it looks like a real shadow. Shadows can get very dark, so don't be afraid to make your shadow dark. But keeping it smooth also makes it look nice and realistic. So bring this all the way around. And then we're going to put some more shadow on the inside. If you have a blender, it's always nicer to blend with a point when you're trying to do something small. So I really do love having my blender. This is one that I bought in a pack of like 12. So like they're pretty cheap. It's just a rolled up piece of paper. I'm going to give this part right there a little extra shadow too, and some shadow there. And I'm just using some of the leftover blender lead. And over here, I'll give a little shadow extra on this side. Let's put a little on that side. And just a little on this side because that's the right side where it would be the brightest. And now I'm going to take my blender again and I will give it some smoothness. And then the final step is going to be to shadow the entire pretzel gray. Now, we don't want to make it solid gray. It's got to have some value in different places. So let me just erase that little spot there. And I'm going to show you how to color it. So this top edge here looks a little bit unsharp. So I will sharpen it. And I'm going to color very gently from the edges in. And when I get to the very center of any one of these pretzel areas, I'm going to lighten up. So it's going to be darker on the edges, lightest in the middle, darkest on the edge again. So you just have to avoid your salt. You're going to do this all over. So everywhere gets darker on the edges. And anytime where you feel like it looks like it's starting to blend into a shadow, just give it some more value of the graphite. Make it a little darker in that area. It's very important that you learn how to get things darker and lighter so that you can make them look 3D. And that's part of the whole thing with drawing is, you know, we can all copy the shapes and all, but it's when we learn how to get those shadows on them that things start to look like they're more three-dimensional and real, even though they're flat. You can make it look like they're real. All right, and see, I'm really glad I didn't put too much salt because you could see how much more time it would take if I had to go in between every piece of salt. It does look really good though when you're very careful around the salt and you show that you have like all these little white specks on there. One of the things that you could do is go back with a white paintbrush and some acrylic paint and put little dots on the top of your pretzel, and then you wouldn't have to go around it. But you would have to have some idea that you're going to do that before you start and put the dots there anyway. All right, so my last little bit of coloring here with my pencil, and then I'm going to switch to the blender. When I use the blender, I'm not going to be willy-nilly with the blender. I'm going to be very specific because I don't want my blender to accidentally wipe out my salt pieces, not after I spent all that time. All right, so there's no salt on that part, so I can use my finger right there and that's it. Otherwise, I've got to switch to this blender and I've got to spend the time to really kind of shade this. And anytime I feel like a shadow was supposed to be darker, like that one right there, and it got blended out, I will just go back with my pencil and like reinforce that darker edge. And it happens all the time when you're drawing because graphite is so easy to smudge that you might realize that, you know, you spend a lot of time drawing something and then find out that you smudged your hand over it. So you've got to be really careful not to put your hand down on areas that you don't want smudged. All right, so you can see I'm going pretty fast and my white pieces are staying nice and white, which is your goal. If you make your white pieces too small, you can lose them very easily. Somebody made a good point earlier that you know you don't have to have salt in your pretzel at all. Some people like cinnamon on their pretzel. So if you have another idea on how you want to garnish your pretzel, you certainly can. Now, tomorrow is day 30, and there will be lots of alternatives for you to decorate your picture the way you want to decorate it. So just giving you a warning that you might want to have some color pencils handy tomorrow so that you could add some color to yours. Now, the final touch on here is always going to be darken your darks. So I'm going to go in here and sharpen my picture up. All right, not on every line, but just where there are areas that I feel like it's needed. And almost done. Get this one here. We don't want the shadow to look like it's actually the pretzel that melted. We want it to look like a shadow. So I'm going to really darken that spot to make that shadow stand out. And day 29 of 1, 2, 3 draw is over. That means that tomorrow is day 30. Best wishes.